Hello, Jeff Zwerink here, and welcome to Give and Take, the segment of the show where we look at important scientific ideas to help equip you to be more confident in sharing your faith. Today I'm joined by my friend and colleague Rana, and we're going to address the question, does faith in God stifle scientific advance? Fuzz, good to have you here today.
Jeff, thank you.
So this is one of those common charges out there. I'm sure you've run into it. I know I have. It's like the idea is basically that if you just say, well, God did it, then how do you do science with that? So, I mean, when you hear this charge, what do you think and how do you respond to it?
Yeah, well, as you point out, I hear that charge quite a bit. And usually it's in conjunction with somebody presenting scientific evidence for God's existence or the reliability of Scripture with the idea that maybe intelligent design or a creation model could actually contribute something to the scientific enterprise. And so many times skeptics or critics will, level the charge that if we go down this path of embracing intelligent design or some form of creationism, we are shutting down the enterprise of science because, as you said, if God did it, then why do we need to continue to ask questions or investigate things scientifically? To me, it seems like it tends to be a bit of a quote-unquote terror tactic.
What do you mean by that?
Well, trying to elicit fear that if we entertain ideas of intelligent design, we're somehow going to harm our capacity to generate scientific advance and therefore inhibit human flourishing, prevent the growth and progress in society.
So in some sense, it seems like you're saying that this is much more of a rhetorical tactic than something that's maybe necessarily well-grounded in what the data has to say.
That's right, yes.
So in that sense, if we can kind of get around the initial lobby or the initial lob of the bomb, figure out how to dissect that, then we might be able to engage in some fruitful discussion afterwards.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
So I know you've written a blog recently arguing that evolution actually has this same capacity to stifle scientific advance. Kind of articulate what you wrote about and what are some of the issues there?
Yeah, well, one of the things that to me people need to be aware of is that when you view life from an evolutionary framework, its origin, its design, its history, the expectation is that biological systems at their very essence are going to be imperfect, flawed systems. And the reason for this is because the mechanism that evolution, quote unquote, uses to generate biological novelty is to take existing designs, to co-opt them and to combine them to create new designs. So you're cobbling together existing designs and modifying them to create new designs, new biological capabilities.
This kind of has a haphazard, almost seems like a haphazard mechanism behind it.
Exactly,
Not
yes.
that things may not work well, but they're not, let's orchestrate them. It's kind of, hey, this worked type thing.
Right. And so because evolution forces this view of biology that it's fundamentally flawed, that means that when life scientists are investigating a biological system, oftentimes very complex systems, and they can't immediately see a rationale for why things are the way that they are, or they see some aspect of that system that seems to be shared with another system, many times they are quick to conclude that these features are just vestiges of an evolutionary history. They're a byproduct of evolution. They are simply part of the flawed design, that their baggage, if you will, that's going along with the evolutionary process, and therefore they stop investigating those systems if, again, they can't see an immediate rationale. And usually when you approach these systems from a design perspective, many times that's when you actually see real advance taking place in understanding biological systems.
Can you guys, we don't have a lot of time to explore the details, but what are some examples where, kind of from an evolutionary perspective, we saw these are vestiges, not useful, where later we found, there's something far deeper about this than what we thought?
Well, one example would be a region in a chromosome. A chromosome is a piece of DNA in the nucleus of the cell that's complexed with proteins. And there is a region of that chromosome called a centromere, and it consists of a highly repetitive sequence of DNA that is very difficult to sequence. and that many people thought to be essentially non-functional because of its highly repetitive nature. And so when the Human Genome Project was undertaken, scientists just didn't even bother sequencing centromeric regions in the human genome.
Because is that just kind of like saying, well, evolution did it, let's not investigate it type thing?
Yeah, it's not going to be functional, so let's not worry about it. Well, for completely different reasons, a team of researchers stumbled upon functional regions in this highly repetitive area of the genome, in the centromeric region, that indicated it was functional, and yet this went uninvestigated for over a decade simply because of a particular view we had of biology shaped by the evolutionary framework.
And I assume that since it has been investigated now, they have found utility and function in it?
Exactly, yeah. And so if you would have approached the study of biology from a design perspective, you would have said, even though we don't quite have an immediate reason for why this area would be functional, let's continue to press in to see if we can actually find function, because it's a very different view of biology and a very different expectation.
Well, okay, so as a Christian, we often do come into a lot of these science-faith discussions, at least different than the skeptic, if not a lot of scientists. So how can we use this sort of challenge when it comes up, or even just kind of bring it in ourselves as a way to engage people with the gospel?
Well, to me, I think if somebody, again, tries to sidetrack the discussion in which you're presenting scientific evidence for God's existence or the reliability of the Christian faith in a broader sense, and this objection comes up that Christianity is a science showstopper, we can bring a counterexample or counterexamples where evolution does the very same thing. And to me, it's not a gotcha type of moment, but rather it helps to take a conversation that is potentially being derailed and bring it back on track, where hopefully the engagement can now be, is the evidence really pointing to a creator? And if it is, what does that actually mean?
Okay, so it's a way of saying, okay, yeah, there are times where you might be able to do that with faith, but science actually, or our evolutionary view actually does that as well. And instead of getting derailed into that, let's actually talk about what the data has to say.
Yes, exactly.
And there's an abundance of evidence that there really is a creator, if you will. Well, thanks, Fuzz. I appreciate your comments. You know, this really is a charged topic, getting told that our faith actually stifles scientific advance. You know, and I would encourage you to go in and dig deeper. Fuzz has written a blog. Go to reasons.org and search for Evolution's Flawed Approach to Science. But what this will allow you to do is when that bomb is lobbed at you, you'll be able to actually take that bomb, dismantle it, and actually use it to engage in a conversation about what the data really says about the truth of Christianity. And when we do that, Christianity will always win out, and we can be very confident.